Alrighty everybody, welcome back to That's Just My Opinion. I am Merlin, and today we will be discussing A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas, book 4 in the Court series. I honestly don't know what the official series name is for this. So, this picks up, I think it's been like about a year, 6 months after the end of book 3. And we've got some new POV characters this time, ladies and gents. It is no longer Pharah and only Pharah. This time we get a split perspective between Nesta and Cassian. Oh boy. So, like I said, this takes place, it feels recently after the events of book 3, but not super recently. I think it's been like about a year and a half maybe actually. It's been a little bit. So it opens with a prologue of Nesta's time in the cauldron and when she ripped part of the power out of the cauldron. And then the story proper begins with Cassian going to pick up Nesta from her horribly shabby, awful little apartment where she was banging some rando, and he's like, you gotta come with me to go talk to your sister. And she's like, do I have to? And he's like, yes. And she's like, fine. And she's awful to him. And they go to meet the rest of the inner circle. And you have it where basically it's an intervention. It's an intervention for Nesta because you find out that Nesta has kind of been self-destructing over the last year and a half, however long it's been. And she is just like, she's an alcoholic now. She's just sleeping with all these random guys. She's just letting her life disintegrate around her. She's very angry, and you can tell that part of that is because she's feeling guilty about her father dying. So they basically tell her, you have 2 options. You either go to the House of Wind and you start training with Cassian, or you have to get out of the night court. We're no longer paying for your bills. We're cutting you off, basically. And those are your options. Either get out of night court, or you have to start playing by our rules. She gets very angry. Nesta gets very angry about this and is like, well, what does Elaine have to say about this? And they're like, Elaine agreed to this. And so Nesta feels all betrayed by Elaine. And then she agrees and she goes up to the House of Wind, and then proceed for Nesta being an awful bitch for like 90% of this book. Throughout the time when she is obstinate against training with Cassian, Cassian just puts up with her shit for the entire thing. They do end up eventually starting to train. She also has to work with the priestesses in the library, where she ends up befriending one of the priestesses, Gwen. She's cute, I like Gwen. She also ends up, she has to go up to the Illyrian war camps for a little bit, and she does end up befriending an Illyrian woman who had her wings clipped. So they end up kind of forming this power girl threesome. And they start training to become warriors. I'm really broad stroking the plot here. And they end up, Nesta ends up convincing the other priestesses to come and train with her and Cassian. She also brings this Illyrian gal. And they are training to become the Valkyries, because the Valkyries were these elite female warrior unit that was during the last war, and they basically all got wiped out. And so they're like, we're the Valkyries reborn, and yay, girl power. Excuse me. And throughout all of this, we still have the problem that the wall is gone. It is poofed, it is no more. So there's kind of some rumblings among the other fairy kingdoms of like, well, maybe we want to go invade the human lands. Might be a good time. And of course, Reese and Pharah are like, no, let's not do that. Let's not go fuck around with the humans. We've also got the problem of that human queen. Well, no, she's not human anymore, but she's now like this withered old crone. She was the one that took the dip in the cauldron and came out all old because the cauldron was pissed. And she's trying to do something. She is scheming, and we find out about these other magical items that exist. They're called the Dread Trove, and there are 3 things. They are a harp, a crown, and a mask, and they are weapons of extreme power. And because the crown, if you wear it, it allows you to basically like mind control people who are around you. You have the mask, which is like a death mask that when you put it on, you can like raise armies of the dead. And there's a harp, which, you know, as you pluck the strings, it's basically Nocturna's key, or Nocturnula's key from Skyrim or the Elder Scrolls game, that it can get you through anything, basically. So there's a side questing of going and finding that. And of course Nesta can sense it because she is made by the cauldron, and these things are also akin to the cauldron, and the evil queen is chasing after them. They also make an alliance with Erens because Erens wants to take out Daddy Dearest, which I don't blame him for. And also, who else? Oh, Tamlin has apparently lost it, and he's like just gone full beast mode and is just roaming around the spring court and letting the spring court fall around itself. What else happens in this? Oh, we find out that Pharah's pregnant. Woohoo. Nah, I love that at the end of book 3, she's like, oh, you know, we're gonna wait a couple centuries before we have kids, you know, we're gonna enjoy our time together. Year and a half later, she's knocked up. I'm like, wow, you guys suck at birth control. Because they say there's birth control in this world. And the drama that goes on with that is that you find out that apparently she and Rhys were having sexy fun times in their Illyrian forms, and she got pregnant while in her Illyrian form, and the baby has wings, and this is going to basically cause Pharah to die in childbirth because Illyrian women have a different shaped pelvis to accommodate baby wings, and Pharah can't use her magic to shapeshift back into her Illyrian form because they're afraid that's going to hurt the baby. So she's like basically, yeah, and they don't tell her this for a long time, and I will get to when that happens. So yeah, this, I'll deal with the Pharah. I'm kind of all over the place with the plot here because they feel so like segmented from each other, like the Pharah baby drama, the Nesta training montages, the Dread Trove, and all of that shenanigans. Like, they feel so separate from each other as far as like, oh, we're dealing with this plot line right now. So for the Pharah baby drama, Rhys finds out that the baby's got wings. He knows that that'll probably kill Pharah. He doesn't tell her this. He ends up telling Cassian. Of course, Cassian knows what it means. He tells Nesta, and there's a point where Nesta gets really mad at Amren because Amren like agreed that Nesta could potentially be a threat. She find out Nesta can make like a new Dread Trove, and Nesta gets, and basically they all agree not to tell Nesta about her powers because they're afraid she's unstable enough that she would make weapons to spite them, because yeah, I'm kind of with them on this one. So Nesta is really pissed off. She goes to confront Amren. Amren tells her off. At that point, I was like, yes, Amren, my queen. Thank you for this, when she just tells off Nesta. But Pharah shows up to try to break up the fight, and Nesta is like, well, they weren't telling you that you're gonna die. And that's when Pharah finds out, and then afterwards Nesta instantly regrets it, of like, oh god, I can't believe I told her like that. And yeah, I am not okay with the fact that Pharah forgives Nesta afterwards. She's like, she was just trying to help me. I'm like, no, she wasn't. She was trying to hurt you, okay? That was not said out of a genuine care for you. She was trying to hurt you. If Nesta had really cared and thought, oh, no, you need to know this information, she would have pulled you aside and been like, hey, Pharah, they're not telling you this. I think you have a right to know, sort of situation. Not in the middle of a fight, okay? It was said to hurt you. And then Nesta and Cassian piss off to the woods for like a week and do a bunch of hiking, and Nesta has to come to terms with herself. The Erens plotline, yeah, Erens is being totally set up as like Rhys 2.0. He is totally like everything. There's so many hints dropped in this book of like, oh, you know, you don't know everything that happened with Moore, because yeah, and that's the thing, is like anytime Erens shows up, everyone just wants to gut this guy, because he, for a little context here, he and Moore hadn't arranged in marriage. They were engaged, basically. Moore went and slept with Cassian to ruin herself, lose her virginity, and so her family tortured her and basically left her for dead on the Autumn Court borders, where Erens, according to what we know, callously left her there to die. And basically every time that Cassian, or anybody, Cassian, anyone, sees Erens, they're like ready to disembowel him. Which I'm like, yeah, Erens didn't help her, but like, what was he gonna do? Was he gonna bring her back to Autumn Court? Like, yeah, that would have gone over well. Also, like, they do not show nearly the same amount of vitriol towards Kier, her father, who actually tortured her. They're like, well, I guess we just have to deal with Kier. And I'm like, why are you guys not wanting to eviscerate him in the same capacity that you guys want to eviscerate Erens? I mean, one of them did the actual torturing. Anyway, there seems to be like a moment, a little spark of something between Erens and Nesta, and I was honestly all bored for it. Because like Erens ends up asking for Nesta's hand in marriage, and she ends up rejecting it because she and Cassian are mates. Ooh, big shock. And I was actually really down for Erens and Nesta because, like, I want this, like, power couple schemers. Like, I really think it could be great, but no, she ends up with Cassian. Dear God, Cassian deserved better. So there's the Dread Trove thing. That ends up kind of being a non-climax. I know they get the crown. I don't remember how they get the crown back, but I know they get the crown. And they get the mask, and they get the harp. They end up collecting all of the token items. That gets put aside for now. That comes into the actual climax. I'd say, action climax of this has to tie back to the Valkyrie girls, because towards the end of their training, Cassian sets up like these trials for them, and they're like these big obstacle courses kind of things, and the girls end up beating it, and it turns out that was actually the qualifiers for this Illyrian rite of passage, where it shows that you're ready to like take the final test to become a warrior. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. So it's like, all right, neat, they pass. There's some Illyrian motherfuckers who see it and are all like, women can't fight. Yeah. And then, of course, they end up getting kidnapped, all three of them, and dumped into the Illyrian Games, and they have to win, or at least survive, because if anybody intervenes with this, even Rhys or Pharah, not only is the person intervening put to death, but also the person they were trying to help. So the girls are on their own. They end up surviving and winning. You find out that the evil queen was part of this and trying to pull strings, and they end up being fine. It's fine. They're fine. So then something else I forgot to mention about the evil queen. So we find out there was one queen of this, like, the 6 queens. One of them is under a curse. It's very Swan-like, and it's a sorcerer who has her under the spell. And I thought, okay, sorcerer, either like a human or a fairy or something like that. No, we find out it's another fucking death god. And he was this brother to the Weaver and the Bone Carver. And I'm like, what was it? Family vacation? Like, what the heck are all these death gods doing here? So he's definitely being set up as like the next big bad. And so, okay, so they get through the trials, they get back home, everything is getting hunky-dory. Well, oh no, Pharah goes into labor 2 months too early. And it looks like, and they go to perform a cesarean, which they state that a cesarean has like a 100% fatality rate. And I'm like, you have magic? Like, how, and you have healing magic? Like, how is a cesarean fatal? Our society has figured out cesareans pretty well. Like, but either way, Pharah is dying, which, the one thing I forgot about this, and I totally forgot about it in the book too, was that Pharah and Rhys made up deal together that when one of them dies, the other will die. So if Pharah dies in childbirth, Rhys will die too. So there's like this whole climactic that Pharah's dying, the baby is stillborn, Rhys is losing it, and then Nesta summons the power of the cauldron and the dread trove and basically saves Pharah and the baby. There's a moment where the goddess of this world, they call her the mother, like supposedly intervenes with Nesta, which is set up very poorly. There's like another moment where supposedly like the mother spoke to her, but I thought it was some other fake shenaniganery. It was not set up well. And of course, Pharah is fine, the baby is fine, and you find out that that Nesta, like, modified not only Pharah's body to be able to have any other Illyrian children forever, but she also made a little few tweaks to herself, so if she and Cassian ever decide to have any little babies, that she will be fine as well, happily ever after. So I'm sorry if that review is kind of sporadic, but Jesus, this book was, it was a lot to get through. I hate Nesta. She was brutally unpleasant for 80% of this book. And, like, I get what the point is. Like, I see the character arc that she's going through, and I can respect it. But God, did it take so long for her to get to the turning point where she became, like, halfway decent, that I'm just like, just get there. And it took, like, 80% of the book to get to that point. And this is not a short book by any means. So dealing with awful Nesta for most of it, I'm just like, Cassian, you deserve so much better than this. And it totally relies on the fact that they're mates to make their relationship work, because apart from the fact that they have really hot sex, there is nothing keeping these two together. Like, I do not buy their relationship at all. And that was the other thing with this that I didn't really like about Nesta, is Nesta becomes a badass warrior babe. This is fine. I thought that was fine for Pharah's character arc. It made sense for Pharah. But for Nesta, I didn't think it worked as well. Like, Nesta was never the warrior. She's like the politician, the schemer. She is this quick-tongue, hard wit, like she's gonna eviscerate you with her words kind of character. But no, it seems like this book is like the only way to get over your trauma is to become badass warrior babe. And I'm like, and that's the thing, like with Elaine, like they do kind of belittle Elaine in this, and Elaine does call him out on it. But it feels so like head pats of like, oh, Elaine, you're just too pure for this world, and go play in your little garden. It's fine. Let the big sisters handle all of this. And there's so much stuff with like Nesta and Pharah's relationship where like it was always antagonistic. I'm not gonna deny that. But like, why is it antagonistic? Because like there's points where Nesta talks about how like, oh, Pharah was daddy's favorite, and I'm like, no, that was always Elaine. Like, that was Elaine, not Pharah. Pharah was like the completely forgotten about child, which is really funny when you think that Pharah is actually the youngest. Just you're gonna go with your tropey sibling dynamics, Pharah feels much more like the middle child, and like that Elaine was the baby, the precious little beauty of the family. Nesta's the eldest, raised for the political scheming, and Pharah's just the forgotten middle child. So that always kind of rubbed me weird. And just like her resentment towards Pharah, I'm like, where is this coming from? Like, Pharah wasn't overly pampered by the parents. There wasn't any of that. Like, their relationship, there were a few points in the series where I thought Nesta and Pharah were gonna hit that, like, you know, we may not always get along, but there's that respect there. I don't buy it. That never really comes to fruition, and it bothered me so much. Other characters in this, Lucian is non-existent in this. Lucian, I really loved him in book 1, and he has just been done dirty by the rest of these books. Like, they keep him and Elaine separate, and that's the thing, like, I'm like, Lucian has already lost one great love of his life, a woman who he thought was supposed to be his mate, and I'm just like, can you let Lucian be happy? But he just is like the kick dog of this series, and he just keeps getting shunted off to other places and parts unknown, and I don't know what's going to happen with Lucian. So yeah, I was not the biggest fan of this book, and I do have, it's something I've wondered about with this series, with Nesta going into her tailspin at the beginning of this book. It all really stems from her father's death, and you know, I don't think it should have been their father that died. Controversial opinion coming here. I think it should have been Elaine. Like, it would make a lot more sense if it was Elaine who was killed by Hybern, because that makes sense why Nesta would tailspin as hard as she does. Like, I get her daddy issues, but I don't know, I think it would have made more sense for it to be Elaine. But that's just my unpopular headcanon that I think Elaine should have been the one to get axed by Hybern and not the character that we didn't know or care about. Sorry, but Nesta is just so deeply unpleasant. She had to cut this with Cassian because Cassian was the only thing that made this tolerable. Cassian, man, you deserve better. So for this book, I would probably rate it a probably 2.5 to 3. It's somewhere in that range. I am assuming there is going to be another book. I am guessing there is going to be a book 5 where we follow Elaine, because this does seem like it's setting up all of the Archeron sisters to eventually be paired off. I know there is the debate in the fandom between whether Gwen should end up with Asriel or whether Elaine should end up with Asriel. I honestly prefer the Gwen and Asriel thing. I don't think Elaine is gonna end up with him, but we'll see if Lucian gets stiffed again. So yeah, 2.5 to 3. Not a big fan of this one. Hated Nesta. Hated her. But things to look forward to in the future. I just finished Hero of Ages for Mistborn Book 3. I will be talking about that soon. And then after that, I'm thinking we're gonna do a special 3-parter. Well, I mean 3 in 1 here. Based off of a TikTok recommendation of a series that I have read, which all has to do with a touch of certain things involving some Greek deities. So look forward to that. And for now, hey, that's just my opinion. If you disagree with me, that's totally cool. If you like this book, please tell me why down in the comments below, and if there's something you'd like to see me take a crack at in particular in the future, also leave your comments down below, and I will talk to you guys in a little while.